Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Ramo Rajamani Sada Vijayate Ramam Ramesham Bhaje Ramena Bihata Nishacharachamu Ramaya Tasmai Namaha. Ramannasti Parayanam Parataram Ramasya Dasosmyaham. Rame Chittalaya Sada Bhavatu me Bho Rama Mamuddhara. Samasta Jana Kalyani Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Satgurum Brahma Vidwaram. Satgurum Brahma Vidwaram. Satpratyaya Kimnu Vihaya Santam Hridyesha Chinta Rahito Hrudakhyah Katham Smaramastamameyamekam Tasya Smritistatra Drudhaiva Nishtha Mrityunjayam Mrityubhiya Shritanam Aham Matir Mrityumupaiti Purvam Atha Swabhavadamruteshu Teshu Katham Punar Mrityudhiyo Vakashah Sarvairnidanam Jagato Hamascha Vachah Prabhuh Kaschidapara Shaktihi Chitretra Lokyam Cha Vilokita Cha Pataf Prakasho Pyabhavatsa Ekah Arabhyate Jiva Jagat Paratma Tattvabhidanena Matam Samastam Idam Trayam Vyavadaham Matisyat Sarvottamaham Matishunya Nishtha Satyam Rushava Chididam Jadam Va Dukkham Sukham Veti Mudha Vivaadah Adrushta Niraham Pratitihi Nishtha Vikalpa Paramakhileshta. Saddarshanam is considered as an advanced text. The reason why it is advanced is it talks mainly about apavada. In Vedanta we know there is adhyaropa and there is apavada. Ramana Maharashi assumes this sadhaka is already in adhyaropa stage. Okay, if you are not familiar with these two terms, adhyaropa apavada means to indicate that non-dual truth, which is without conditioning, without qualities, never becomes an object of sense organs, never becomes an object of mind also. What would be the way of indicating that truth? The first step is some indicator, some quality is knowingly superimposed on that truth, by which our attention can shift from that or through that quality to Atma, to that truth. And after that, whatever indicator was used, that indicator is removed. So one example of Adhyaropa Apavada is Panchakosha Viveka. Now we want to point out that Atma, which is beyond Panchakoshas. 5 Panchakoshas are there, or 5 koshas are there called as Panchakosha. Now Adhyaropa is to say, let us start by describing what is Annamaya Kosha, food sheath. Then they say there is Pranamaya Kosha, physiological sheath. Next one is Manomaya Kosha, mind sheath. Vijnanamaya Kosha, intellectual sheath. Anandamaya Kosha, the blissful sheath. Now the purpose is not to really describe these things. What is Annamaya, what is Pranamaya, what is Manomaya. Jiva starts his journey by thinking, I am this body. So Vedanta comes and says, you are not only this physical body, there are 4 more layers inside. Let us pay attention to all of them. In and through description of these layers, a lot of sadhana happens. When mind is described, through that description of mind itself, we get to know how to deal with this mind, how to deal with intellect. So that part also falls under Adhyaropa. But when that is done, Adhyaropa is complete. The final step of Adhyaropa is actually to say, look at that consciousness, which is covered by these Panchakoshas. First Panchakoshas were described. Then it was said, they are called as Kosha because it is covering that Atma. Kosha means covering. So that Atma Tattva is covered by these 5 Koshas. So becomes easier. We know what are Koshas now. The truth or Atma is being pointed out from the standpoint of Panchakosha. Apavada comes and says, there is nothing called as Panchakosha. All of that is a projection of Maya. There is only Atma which is appearing as everything. That is called as Apavada. Means end of the day, we should not remain with Panchakosha and Atma which is getting covered by Panchakosha. Right? Advaitam is that non-duality, non-dual truth. Whatever duality is used, it is only for Adhyaropa. Okay, this part is clear. Now Saddarshanam is a text which assumes that this sadhaka is already gone through Adhyaropa. The reason I brought this is, look at the 3rd verse. Or look at the 4th one first. See what Bhagavan says. Arabhyate jiva jagat paratma. Tattvabhidhanena matam samastam. He says all matam, all schools of thought, they start with this idea that there is jiva, jagat and Ishvara. Now you think about journey of an ordinary person. Does he think about this triad? He says there is no triad. I am there, world is there. The introduction of Ishvara is also done through Shastra. We might say it came through culture. But in culture also it came through scriptures only. We were said that we have to worship Bhagavan. That was also done through Shastra. And that is how this person arrives at this triad. The point is, Bhagavan is going to say, dissolve this triad into that Sat. But before that, this sadhaka has to first appreciate what is that triad. So that is the idea here. Even the previous verse said, Sarvai Nidanam Jagato Hamascha. Of Jagat, of world and of this Ahankara, the substratum is some, or the cause is some inexplicable power. Apara Shakti. To whom does that Apara Shakti belong to? Kaschit Prabhu. Some divine entity is there who is wielding this power of Maya. From that Maya only, world is appearing and Ahankara is appearing. Saddarshanam is to recognize that substratum in which both of these things are appearing. By removing Maya, by removing ignorance, abiding in this fact, in that Sat alone, Ahankara appears. In that Sat alone, Jagat appears. The extent to which we can look at both these entities as mithya, to that extent, we are absorbing Vedanta. Which two entities? Ahankara and Jagat. So it is one thing to say the cause of or the substratum of Ahankara, substratum of Jagat is that Atma. But somewhere down the line, we feel Ahankara is also real, Jagat is also there, and there is some substratum below it. But this is an Grantha of Apavada, where Bhagavan is telling us there is only Atma. Inquire into that nature of Atma. The result of it will be Jagat and Ahankara will be understood as Mithya. Now see, to understand Saddarshanam, we need lot of background from Vedanta. In Vedanta Sara or in Tattva Bodha, we have studied Shristi Prakriya. Right? Where do we start? Brahmashraya Maya Asti. There is this Maya, which is Brahmashraya. Means it is rooted in Brahman. That Maya has 5 family members. What are they? Space, air, fire, water, earth. Safe way. From each element, we are still in subtle creation right now. From sattvic aspect of each element, Jnanendriyas came about. Rajasic aspect, Karmendriyas came about. Our own Karmendriyas. We don't have to make Karmendriyas paroksha. The ability to see, that is the sattvic aspect of all these 5 elements. Which element, by the way? Fire element. Because fire element has Rupa Guna, form. So the corresponding sense organ which will take that form is eyes. From the Rajasic aspect of all the 5 elements, Karmendriyas came about. Samashti, totality of sattvic aspect of 5 elements, Antakarana came about. Samashti Rajasic aspect of 5 elements, Pancha Pranas came about. Tamasic aspect of 5 elements got mixed together, Panchikaranam happened, and Sthula Srishti came about. So when we say, if you know Atma, Ahankara and Jagat dissolves, what does it mean? What it means is, first you have to appreciate cause-effect relationship. Effect is Jagat and Ahankara. Cause is Atma. Brahmashraya Maya Asti. Story started from there. Then we came all the way to Ahankara. Where is Ahankara in the picture? To which category does Ahankara belong to? Antakarana. Antakarana has Mana, Buddhi, Chitta, Ahankara. Right? So Ahankara is part of that Antakarana, which is sattvic aspect of all 5 elements. And Jagat, which is tamasic aspect of 5 elements, Panchikruta, grossified form. Now, whenever I look at Jagat, whenever I look at Ahankara, first thought we should come is, all of these have a cause. It is not Nirmula, it is Samula. That Moolam is Sat. Now the thing is, whenever a cause becomes an effect, it has to undergo some modification. We can never have an effect without the cause undergoing modification, provided that effect is only an appearance. What are the two examples? Milk turning into yogurt. Cause turning into effect. The moment something becomes a cause, it loses its original nature as a cause, turns into something else. Means without milk, you cannot have yogurt. Milk is the cause, yogurt is the effect. But once you have yogurt, you cannot get back that milk. This kind of transformation is called as parinama or vikara. Sa tattvato anyatha pratha. If something really undergoes modification, that is called as vikara iti uchyate. Atattvato anyatha pratha, that which doesn't undergo modification but appears as something else. Vivarta iti uchyate. Both are from Vedanta Sara. Example for atattvato anyatha pratha is rope appearing as snake. What is the cause for rope? What is the cause for snake? You cannot find any other cause. Rope alone is the cause. But you say, inquire into that rope, snake will be understood as mithya. That rope alone appears as snake. This is a result of understanding. That is another point we have seen several times in the past. Vedanta never says, inquire into illusion. If you just keep inquiring into illusory snake, we might describe very well how that is not a snake. But fear of going towards that so-called illusory snake will not go away. On the other hand, if I understand the rope, I don't have to separately put forth effort to tell myself that this is not snake, this is only rope. In the same way, merely inquiring into ahankara, merely inquiring into jagat, by not paying attention to their cause, which is sat, will not take us anywhere. We might say ahankara is mithya. We might say jagat is mithya. But still samsara, coming from that ahankara and mithya jagat, will very well continue. On the other hand, if a sadhaka can abide in that sat and understand that sat alone is appearing as ahankara and jagat. Ahankara and jagat are not independent entities. Mistaken sat is ahankara. Mistaken sat is jagat. Hold on to that rope snake example. All Vedanta concepts will become clear. You can say that snake is mistaken rope. Right? Snake is nothing but mistaken rope. Because there is karya karana there. Cause and effect is there. He says jagat and ahankara is nothing but mistaken sat. What caused us to commit this mistake? Avidya. Avidya, Maya. That is why we are studying Vedanta. To remove this avidya, to remove this Maya, through knowledge. Through knowledge. True knowledge word is important. Removal will not be literal removal. Understanding the nature of Sat in this way, that itself is removal of avidya. Fourth verse also had similar echoes. Dissolving ahankara means dissolving the triad. Triad of Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara. Important thing to note here is, Bhagavan is referring to darshanas over here. If anybody says, I want to start my own school of philosophy, they welcome, encourage also. But they say, you cannot just declare that you want to start a school and go away. There are certain categories you have to elaborately describe. The first category is pramana. That person has to tell what are his valid means of knowledge. Pramana mimamsa, he has to declare. 6 pramanas are there. Pratyaksha, Anumana, Upamana, Arthapatti, Anupalabdhi, and Shabda Pramana. 6 done, right? Okay. Out of these 6, which are the ones that I'm using as valid means of knowledge to come up with my philosophy? Second step that person has to describe is Tattva Mimamsa. What are the fundamental building blocks of my philosophy? Building block means, do I consider atoms as the finest things from which I will start describing? What is my tattva? What is the substance with which, based upon which I'll be building my philosophy? So Sankhya Darshana, they will start with their own tattvas. They will say, we say these are the fundamental building blocks of creation. They are eternal. Based upon that, we will explain everything further. Third category is, what is your understanding of Jiva Jagat Ishvara? What is your understanding of Jiva Jagat Ishvara? That you have to clearly describe, clearly define before starting any philosophy. It is okay to say you believe in only 2. Like Bauddha Darshana, they will say there is only Jiva Jagat to start with. Charvak Darshan will say there is only Jagat. Jiva is also there, but they say purpose of that Jiva is to live a good life in this Jagat. But they also have to do Tattva Mimamsa. They also have to define what are their fundamental tattvas. They also have to define their pramana. For Charvak Darshan, what is their pramana? Pratyaksha pramana. Whatever you see, that is the only reality. There is nothing more beyond that. Even if you take this definition of Charvak, they will have a lot of problems. You know why? We cannot live our life without Anumana. Transactional life. Anumana means what? Deriving inferences based upon Pratyaksha, deriving inferences about what you don't see right now. Right? You are seeing the smoke, you infer fire on the hill. If somebody says, I am going to believe only in Pratyaksha, means he is going to go to that mountain, see that fire, then only he will say, there is fire there. Simple weather to predict, you need Anumana. Now this is Khandanam which is done of Pratyaksha, of Charvak Darshana. They say if you look at it only from Pratyaksha standpoint, even transactional life cannot be lived. So much of our life is based on Shabda Pramana. Our views are influenced by what we hear. But anyway, Charvak also has to talk about Pramana. All Darshanas have to talk about Tattva. And they have to talk about Jiva Jagat Ishvara. That is why Bhagavan says, Arabhyate Jiva Jagat Paratma Tattvabhidhanena Matam Samastam. Means he's talking about Darshanikas, those who are thinkers of philosophy. Since we have done 3, let us see the other 2 also. Fourth one is Bandha Moksha. Means a philosopher has to define what is his definition of bondage, what is his definition of liberation. In spite of having great philosophy, in spite of having philosophy which can shake a person's conviction, like Jagat is Mithya, you say you also have to give Achara Samhita. Fifth one is Achara Samhita, means how should that person who is living in that philosophy who is abiding in that philosophy or going in that direction of that philosophy, how should he live his life? What are the values which are there that he should hold on to? That is called as Achara Samhita. All these 5 things put together becomes a darshana. When it comes to Achara Samhita, all schools of thoughts will be together. Bauddha Darshana, Sankhya, Yoga Darshana, Advaita Vedanta Darshana. Nobody will say we should live an unethical life. In fact, we can leverage upon each other's sadhana when it comes to Achara Mimamsa. Even Dvaita Darshana, dualistic school of thoughts, the kind of disciplines they have in living a good life, ethical life, all of that is helpful. Differences will come in the first 4. They will say we accept different pramana. Some will say we accept Vedas. Some will say we don't accept Vedas. Some will say this is our tattva. Elements are real. Some darshanas will say we don't accept that. Numbers will differ. Third one is Jiva Jagat Ishvara. In that also they'll have some differences. Bandha Moksha also, slight differences will be there. Although the main goal of all darshanas was to remove sorrow. Some will say we just want to remove sorrow. Some will say we want to abide in happiness. The world of darshanas is very beautiful. Very, very pure. They are Mahatmas who are least concerned about anything transactional. Their vision is so high, they are able to keep their mind in that darshanika vritti, darshanik thoughts. But the point is, Bhagavan Ramana Maharashi assumes that this sadhaka who is reading Saddarshanam is already in that darshana. Means he has done vichara that there is Jiva, there is Jagat, and there is Ishvara. Saddarshanam's point is, inquire whether there are 3 independent things or it is one appearing as 3. Idam trayam yavad aham matisyat. It says this triad is there as long as ahankara is there. Idam trayam yavad aham matisyat. So where did you put comma here? After idam trayam. Idam trayam means these 3 are there until ahammati or ahankara is there. Means when ahankara wakes up, that is when triad is perceived. Ahankara dissolved, triad is not perceived. If this meaning is clear, you can also put that comma after yavat. Second meaning will come out. Idam trayam yavat, tavat ahammati. Means until this triad is there, until that point, ahankara is safe. Until Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara are seen as 3 independent entities, until that point, ahankara is very well there. Okay, that is the beauty of this verse. Bhagavan says, final abidance is what? Sarvottama ahammati shunya nishtha. The greatest nishtha, greatest abidance is in that non-dual truth, which is devoid of ahankara. Nishtha we can get in several things. Japa nishtha, tapo nishtha, stotra nishtha. All of them are beautiful. What is the uttama nishtha? Supreme most abidance, conviction. This is that is in Sat, which is devoid of ahankara. You take any other nishtha. In all that nishtha, the root will be ahankara. It will be assumed, I am ahankara. I might be a good ahankara, but still I am finite. That is the main idea here. But we have to appreciate this point we had seen in Vedanta Sara. First, a devotee comes from Traita to Dvaita. Then from Dvaita he goes to Advaita. How did we see this there? Traita means Jiva Jagat Ishvara. When he comes to Dvaita, he dissolves Ishvara and Jagat as one. Means he doesn't say there is world and there is God somewhere different from the world. He says, my God alone is appearing as the world. So that chaupai from Ramcharitmanas, Siye Ramamaya Saba Jagajani, Karahu Pranama, Jori Jugapani. He can do pranama only when he sees Bhagavan as Jagat. Saba Jagajani. How did you know all this whole creation to be? What did you know this creation to be? He says, I know this creation to be Siya Rama. A natural expression of that knowledge is he has a reverential attitude towards everything in this creation. Karahu Pranama, Jori Jugapani. What is the benefit of this drishti? He says he doesn't see people as people, doesn't see objects as objects. His bhavana with them, his interaction with them is just as he would interact with Bhagavan. All the emotions, whatever he feels towards the Lord, that he feels towards the world. With that mind, he can appreciate Vedanta. That is the next step which takes him towards Advaita. It's a long journey. From Traita to Advaita is almost impossible. Klesho dikatarastesham. It is not impossible. Bhagavan says there is a lot of klesha, lot of struggle. You know, the expression of that struggle is, I understand Vedanta. But when it comes to practical life, whenever that question comes, you must understand this problem is there. Because practical life will be solved by Dvaita. Means practical life will be solved at the realm of Dvaita. Advaita and Vyavahara should be kept separate. You know who says this? Jada Bharatji tells Raja Rahugana. In Bhagavatam, this story comes. You know that portion, right? Jada Bharatji had to take birth again, got attached to a deer. Again, he was born as a very highly evolved soul. So much so that he was very, very careful right from birth. What is the saying in Hindi? Doodh ka jala, chhach bhi phook phook ke pita hai. If you get burnt while drinking hot milk, even if somebody gives buttermilk, he'll blow it, cool it down, and then drink it. Like that, he was so afraid from the beginning to get caught in, that he'll get caught in samsara. Lived like a jadavat lokam acharet. Then one fine day, king's procession is going. One of the palanquin carriers is sick. They bring a substitute, Jada Bharatji. Now he's going with his own pace. Everybody wants to walk fast. Jada Bharatji going slowly. If an ant comes, he would jump. And the king's head was hitting the palanquin on top. Then he gets down in between and scolds him. The king scolds Jada Bharatji. Says, you know, you don't look weak. You're well built. Looks like you don't know how to walk. Like that, he says few things. But then Jada Bharatji says, I am what I am. No matter what you do, my Swarupa will not change. Now that gets the king's attention. He says, I was on my way to meet Kapila Rishi, to have satsang with him. Are you that Kapila Muni who has come in this form? He says, please, teacher, give me this teaching. I have few questions to ask. So what is your question? Raja Rahugana, he says, people say in Vedanta that whatever experience is there in this world, that experience doesn't affect Atma. In Ishavasya Upanishad, I have studied Atma is Akayam, Avranam, Asnaviragam, without subtle body, without wounds, without cuts. But a small cut comes, I feel I am affected. He gives example also. If you keep fire, on that fire, you keep a pot. In that pot, you put water. In that water, you put rice. Now that rice which is there inside gets affected by the heat outside. He says that heat, the fire, is like experiences coming. That pot is his physical body, and that rice inside is Atma. He says, I feel I am affected by experiences outside. Jada Bhariji is in a different mood. He says, you talk like a wise person, but you are foolish. That is how he starts the teaching. He says, because what you're doing there is, you are mixing Vyavahara with Paramartha. When it comes to Vyavahara, solutions for Vyavahara are not at the level of Paramartha. If there is heat or cold, he says, where will you find solution for that? Not at the level of Paramartha. He says, at Vyavaharik level, you have to find the solution. If there is Sukha or Dukkha, he says, at Vyavaharik level, solution is Dharma. Then at Paramartha, don't bring Vyavahara. Just like in Vyavahara, you did not bring Paramartha. In Paramartha, don't bring Vyavahara. We use the word Vyavaharika Satta. What is the meaning of Vyavaharika Satta? Literal meaning will be what? Transactional, then Satta means reality. The true meaning of that word Vyavaharika Satta is that for which we give reality because of the pressure of transaction. Vyavaharika Satta is no real Satta. Because there is Vasana, because there is desire, because there is pressure of Vyavahara, you have to give some reality to this. So that plane which is given reality because of the pressure of Vyavahara, that is called as Vyavaharika Satta. But why did we bring up this point? Traita to Dvaita to Advaita. So whenever we get any questions about what is the application of Vedanta in practical life, Vedanta is here to negate Jagat. It is here to negate Ahankara. Now when we say practical life, what are we assuming there? Or what are we holding on to there? Ahankara. So both will not go together. Okay, a mellower way to understand is this. If we are striving for this goal of dissolving duality, the prerequisite for that is sadhana chatushtaya. If we can sincerely bring that sadhana chatushtaya in our life, a lot of transactional questions will be resolved by that sadhana chatushtaya. Because sometimes people don't like it, when you say Advaita Vedanta and practical life, they don't have any connection, really speaking. You say, no, sadhana chatushtaya part which is there, that will help in all ways. Recently, I think I had shared this earlier also. In India, they have civil service exams, right? IAS, IFS, different cadres are there. One of their subject is ethics. everybody has to learn. Ethics is one of the subject. The syllabus of that ethics, if you see, is nothing but sadhana chatushtaya. Because they have to be with a group of people who are there only for 5 years, all the politicians. They come with their agenda, their goal. And those who are implementing their policies are these people. So how to live there without getting frustrated? How to get your work done without coming out of the system? Same sadhana chaturya. They're talking about shama, talking about dhamma, titiksha. Know when to speak, know when not to speak. All of that. So in that way, it will help in Vyavahara. But we have to appreciate the final teaching of Vedanta is non-duality. That non-dual truth I am, not this person who is going through a particular jivan. Okay. Next one is also beautiful. Satyam rushava chididam jadamba. Bhagavan says, whenever you discuss, make sure that your discussion is not merely for intellection. You discussed about Jagat, whether it is real or it is unreal, whether it is Chit, sentient or insentient, Chid idam or Jadam idam. Dukkham sukham, is it of the nature of sorrow or is it Ananda Swarupa? You meet both sides. People also say, the world is so beautiful, such a beautiful day. It says all different views you see. And if you come to Vedanta sometimes, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi Dukkha Doshanu Darshanam. Bhagavan says this whole world is filled with sorrow. Don't you see it? He says. There is birth, there is death, there is old age, there is sickness. He says, having attained this Dukkhatmaka Jagat, worship me. This person is debating, what is the nature of world? Is it Dukkham or is it Sukham? All of this discussion is Mudha Vivaadah. Bhagavan says this discussion is futile. Why is it Mudha Vivaadah? One thing is, Bhagavan says, don't get caught up in words. Sometimes what happens, we use many words, but we don't have that clarity what that word is referring to. One person went to a priest with a question, burning question. He said, please tell me, what is God? That priest said, God is truth. He said, okay, what is truth? Truth is God. He said, sir, I came with one question. I'm going away with 2 questions. That is the main point, that sometimes we use so many words, we miss the point, what that word is referring to. In Sanskrit, it's very beautiful. There is something called as pada, something called as padartha. Pada means word. Pada artha means that entity which is indicated by the word. So our scriptures are very clear. They say don't only remain at pada. For pada you need vyakarana, which vibhakti, with sandhi, so that you know the pada. But from pada, you have to go to padartha. Maharaji, he would give an example. If you ask a child, what is nose? Now the child starts describing. Nose is that instrument by which we breathe. Nose is that instrument which is in between the eyes. Nose is the substratum of nostrils. All of this he says, in spite of him giving all correct definitions, there is no guarantee he has understood what is nose. Unless he takes his hand and says, this is nose, no matter what he says, all of that is Mudha Vivaadah. Like that, when Jagat is discussed, or nature of Atma is discussed. Unless you understand that Atma I am, and what we are discussing about Jagat is to come to that same Atma. There is no independent purpose in inquiring about Jagat. Unless that happens, all this discussion is Mudha Vivaadah. Doesn't have any purpose. Another takeaway from these verses, what is the sign of a person who has had Saddarshanam? What is the insignia of a wise person who has had Saddarshanam? This verse tells us that person doesn't engage in futile talks. In several texts, this particular statement will come. Mundakopanishad, there is one statement which says, Vijanan Vidwan Bhavate Nati Vadi. Vijanan Vidwan. The one who knows. Knows what? Knows that there is only Sat, there is nothing else. Everything is a very good story. He says that person will not become argumentative. There is a text called as Yoga Vasishta. That is a teaching given by Vasishta Maharshi to Bhagavan Rama when he was sitting in that dejected state. He went around the kingdom, saw things, came back, and he sits in one place, totally dejected with how this human life is. Vasishta Maharshi gives him teaching. The main teaching in Yoga Vasishta is, O Rama, this Jagat is mithya. There is nothing here other than that non-dual truth. Holding on to this knowledge, be free from sorrow. And what is the samsara that I'm seeing? Vasishta Maharshi makes very broad, bold claims there. He says, you see what you want to see. Whatever this mind imagines, that manifests. This is called as Drishti Srushti Vada. It is not that there is a thing and then you are seeing it. You are seeing it because you are imagining it. And then he also says, even the concept of bondage, that you are bound, that is also unreal. Now Bhagavan has a doubt. He says, Vasishta Maharshi, what did you say just now? Whatever mind imagines, that manifests. And right after that you said, bondage is also unreal. How should I understand both these things? So Vasishta Maharshi starts telling a story. He says there was a kingdom in which there were 3 princes. A very nice story. All Yoga Vasishta stories are very beautiful but Advaitic in nature. He says out of these 3 princes, 2 were unborn, 1 was yet to be conceived. 2 were unborn, 1 was yet to be conceived. Then one day what happened? There was a famine in that kingdom. And because of that famine, they had to leave that kingdom, go to some neighboring place. On the way, they walked and walked and walked, very tired. Then they found 3 trees. 2 did not exist, 1 was unplanted. Then they took rest under that tree, ate some fruits, felt refreshed, then they went ahead. Then they came across 3 rivers. 2 had dried up, in 1 there was no water. They took a dip in those 3 rivers, 3 of them, felt very refreshed, then went ahead. Then finally, last one. There is longer, but I cut it short. They found 3 palaces. 2 were unbuilt. 3rd one did not have walls. Finally, they went, they settled down in that palace. Because of the good qualities they had from their previous place, they did lot of satkarma there, brought lot of sadhu mahatmas, and with that punya karma, they lived happily thereafter. You see, this was the story a grandmother narrated to a small child. This is also there, in Yoga Vasishta. And that child was so happy listening to this story. Vasishta ji tells Bhagavan Rama, if you contemplate on this story, you will grow up to be a wise person. If you contemplate on this story, you will grow up to be a wise person. So we can fast forward. What did Bhagavan contemplate? The main message here is this creation that we are seeing, whatever experiences we are having here, is just like that story. It looks good, looks very entertaining, keeps us busy. But really speaking, step 1 itself was on the wrong note. 3 princes, 2 were unborn, 1 was yet to be conceived. Then you keep telling whatever story you want. None of that makes any sense. What is the darshtanta there? This ahankara and jagat have so many stories to tell. But the fundamental thing is questioning whether they are real or not. Now, if somebody has understood this, how much understood what? Understood the mithyatva of jagat, mithyatva of ahankara. Just like that story was there, like that this story also continues. One who has understood this mithyatva, what would he want to talk about? That is why that quotation comes, Vijanan Vidwan Bhavate Nativadi. That cannot be possible, means person cannot become non-argumentative unless he understands Jagat as Mithya. Second one also comes in Sadhana Panchakam. Natu Rutha Vakyam Samucharyatam. Don't speak unless it is absolutely necessary. If you do, it will be Mudha Vivaadah. Example given there is, this again is given in Shastra, Gau Pashvadivat Vang Nirodha. How should a jnani live? Even a sadhaka, how should he live? Just like a cow, it eats that fodder and keeps chewing. Once in a while, it will moo. Only when it has to say something. Like that, this jnani has absorbed this knowledge and is constantly reflecting upon it. Don't get caught up in anything other than this truth. That is Mudha Vivaadah. That is the nature of Saddarshanam. Practical aspect is given over here. We should also make a note, all other Vivada that we get into, other than this triad also, that is also Mudha Vivaadah. See, one mindset sometimes becomes, all these people who discuss Vedanta, so much of hair-splitting logic, technical topics, Jiva Jagat Ishvara they're discussing. See, Raman Maharshi only said, all that is Mudha Vivaadah. Now, what are you discussing? IPL is going on, different things about something of this world. That is also Mudha Vivaadah. Here it is said from a Darshanika standpoint that don't make your discussion academic. Take it to the final step of negating Ahankara and Jagat. Next one, somebody has a question. Is God with form or is God formless? This devotee has a question. Is Bhagavan Saguna or is he nirguna? What do you think Ramana Maharshi's answer is going to be? He says, what is your understanding of yourself? Are you with form or are you without form? He says, if you are with form, you cannot deny Bhagwan to be with form. Means if you are with form, you cannot say Bhagwan is formless. Now, next part is interesting. He says, if you drop your form, he doesn't say Bhagwan becomes formless. He says, who is there to question about whether Bhagwan is with form or without form? That is the beauty here. He says, all questions dissolve when the questioner is dissolved. See this verse now. Sarupa buddhir jagatishvare cha. Sarupa buddhir jagatishvare cha. Sarupa dhiratmani yavadasti. Sarupa dhiratmani yavadasti. Arupa atma yadi kaf prapashyet. Arupa atma yadi kaf prapashyet. Sadrishtireka navadhirhi purna. Sadrishtireka navadhirhi purna. Sarupa buddhir jagatishvare cha. Sarupa dhiratmani yavadasti. Arupa atma yadi kaf prapashyet. Sadrishtireka navadhirhi purna. We'll just see the Anvaya. Second line you see. Yavad atmani sarupadhihi asti. Yavad atmani sarupadhihi asti. Tavat, tavat you have to add. Tavat jagati ishwarecha sarupa buddhihi. Jagati ishwarecha sarupa buddhihi. Now come to the third line. Yadi atma arupaha. Yadi atma arupaha. Kaha prapashyet. Kaha prapashyet. Sa drishtihi eka anavadihi. Anavadihi hi purna. Anavadihi hi purna. Yavad atmani sarupadihi asti. Until we have sarupatva, means we think of ourselves, atmani means one's own self, we think of ourselves as with form. Until that point, jagati ishwarecha. In jagat and in Ishvara, there will be this notion, there will be this idea that they are also with form. Jagati ishwarecha sarupa buddhihi asti. Yadi atma arupaha. If you understand yourself to be pure consciousness without any panchakoshas. What was a critical thing which got negated in that panchakosha that is relevant here? Ahankara. Out of that panchakosha, ahankara got negated if you think of yourself devoid of ahankara. Yadi atma arupaha, kaha prapashyet. Who is there to ask this question? Means to ask question, you need ahankara. To inquire into saguna nirguna, you need ahankara. If ahankara is gone, questioner is gone, all questions are gone. Kaha prapashyet, sa drishtihi. That drishti, that vision of this Chaitanya Swarupa. Eka. Eka means that drishti is of non-duality. Eka is non-duality. Advaitam, that is the meaning of the word Eka. Anavadihi. One meaning of Anavadihi is Avadi means limit, boundary. Anavadi means without limit. And that is infinite. That is how this drishti is. Or another meaning of Anavadi is this kind of a vision stays with that sadhaka forever. If he has really done Shravanam, thought about it, meditated upon it, he doesn't feel, oh, sometime I feel that everything is consciousness. Then suddenly I start feeling Jagat has come back. Anavadi means eternal abidance in this truth. That happens for this sadhaka. Purna. Purna means it is all pervading. This Chaitanya is not something hidden inside. That is the substratum in which Jagat is appearing. Infinitude is indicated by the word Purna. Okay. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Hari Om.